Hey folks, Brian here. Before we start today's episode with the amazing Chris Grace back on the show, I wanted to remind you that we do have a Patreon at patreon.com/late night, and if you sign up at any tier over there, you'll get access to our weekly video episode. Additionally, if you sign up at the 2 or 3 peach tier, you'll get a bonus mini episode every week. Sometimes it's just us talking, sometimes it's us playing video games, sometimes it's something weird. I don't know. It's different every week. Anyway, thank you for supporting the show, and please enjoy this episode with Chris Grace.
At least it's a productive cough. Like, it's the worst when it's not a productive one.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, Chris is nothing if not productive.
That's true.
That's right. I'm productive of phlegm anytime.
Phlegm and entertainment.
Just going to drink from this 2-liter of Coke Zero.
It's such a power move.
This is
Right.
what, like, when you're a kid, this is like what adult life is what you think of.
That's right.
Because I buy 2 liters of soda, and I'm an adult, and I'm at home, and I'm like, am I going to pour it into a glass? No, I'm just going to drink
Why
from
would
the
you?
2-liter.
And your husband doesn't mind this because he doesn't share the bottle, or you're married?
No,
and
he
doesn't
drinks caffeine-free Diet Coke from the 2-liter as well. So, you know.
Okay. Hold on. Something is definitely beeping, and I need to shut it off because it's going to bother me. 1 second.
It's in Brian's head.
Keep talking.
Saying that it was a power move was literally exactly what I was going to say, so I'm glad that Brian and I at least are on the same wavelength. Does it not bother you when it gets flat?
Well, here's the thing. I'll have a 2-liter, and I'll tend to drink 2/3 of it and then get rid of it.
It's the same thing a child would do, you know? Like, okay, I'm done with this. Goodbye.
I actually would love to move to having a bunch of 1-liters in my life, but they're often the same price as the 2-liter.
Yeah, 2 liters aren't just for like a sad little table at a party. No.
Yeah. However, I recently got what's it called? It's not a Soda Stream. It's a Drink Mate. And so my husband was like, well, why don't you recarbonate some of the 2 liters that you've...
Oh, that
So I
is
might
an
try that.
interesting idea.
I've always wondered
Yeah.
if you could do that.
Well, we're going to find out. Brian, I was going to ask, have you seen the film The Conversation?
The Gene Hackman one from
Yeah.
the 70s? Oh, yeah. I love it.
Okay. Because he's also searching his room for a hidden sound. That's
right.
And,
In fact,
and goes crazy.
It has that famous final shot, right, where he's tearing up the room, right? And he never
Looking
sees...
for a bug.
Looking for a bug. I haven't seen that in a long time.
Great movie.
But
I've
great,
never seen
yeah,
it.
as I remember, great. Yeah.
I think I've seen that last scene, but I have not seen the movie. And speaking of seeing movies, and also me thinking about Chris, recently I went to the movies by myself to see a movie that was not the kind of thing that I wanted to drag other people into because I needed some quiet reflection. And the moment I walked out of it, I was like, I have to know if Chris has seen this movie. Did you watch Zone of Interest?
Oh, this is my favorite movie of 2023.
Okay, great.
I
Yeah,
saw
me,
it twice.
me too,
I saw
probably.
it twice in 1 week.
I haven't seen it yet.
You saw it twice.
I'm-
Wait, you saw it twice in 1 week? How did you do
saw it
that to yourself?
I saw it by myself, and then I basically told my husband, like, we should go see this because people are going to be talking about this movie. I was interested in seeing it again because just because it's so fun.
Yeah, it's a real romp.
Brian, actually, I have to say, from a sound design point of view, it is insane. Like
That's it won the Oscar, right?
for
that
sound,
specifically?
yeah.
Yeah.
And then lost score to Oppenheimer, which is the biggest. Not that I expected anything different, but that's a fucking crime.
I actually thought score might go to Poor Things, which is a movie I thought was okay, but I loved the score of.
I haven't seen it yet. I'm definitely behind and just put all
See,
my...
I'd be curious to see what you think of Poor Things, because to me, Poor Things, I think is trying to position itself as like a feminist film, but I think it's like, I'm not totally sure that it is.
That's what I've seen about it. I'm a really big Yorgo fan.
I love him. Fortunately, I think it's my least favorite Yorgos Lanthimos film.
That bums me out. I feel like that one for me, the one that I really wish I liked more is The Lobster.
Yeah.
It's still good.
I love
but
Dogtooth.
Yeah, Dogtooth is.
I love The
up there for
Favorite.
me.
I have not seen Killing of a Sacred Deer, which I heard is one.
Oh,
Yeah,
Chris.
neither have I.
Oh, fuck. It's maybe my favorite of his.
You reached
Oh,
towards
wow.
the camera for that.
And also, Chris, I think based on the other movies that we've talked about, I think you would really like Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Okay, cool. So I would say this about Poor Things. I don't think it spoils anything. It's, the thing that I'm hesitant about with Poor Things is that it's about this woman and about sort of her journey through the world. But then have you seen it, Brian?
No, not yet. I want to, but I haven't yet.
It's more to the thing like I just want to ask more women what they think of this, because most of her journey through the world is about how men want to have sex with her. And I'm just like, is this the like life journey that I would be interested in? Are these the main obstacles that I'd want to follow a story about with? I don't know.
Yeah, that makes
It's like-
sense.
It's like if Frankenstein like sort of
Fucked.
broke like yeah, it's basically like if all of Frankenstein was about like people wanting to fuck Frankenstein. It's like, is that what? I don't know. Like I was just
And also, if Frankenstein had a baby brain,
yeah, well that's the other thing. That's
Yeah.
well, I mean that's an interesting thing about it too, is like you've created this situation where this person has an infant's brain, and then like almost immediately people are trying to have sex with her. And
This
it's
is
like
this was my question about it too. Like, I mean, I know the basic, idea behind it, and even some of the plot points, but it's. I mean, am I going to be the first person to use the phrase "fuck a baby" on this podcast?
I mean-
Possibly, but it seems like that's kind of what's going on. Or is that fair?
it's very fair.
Now, I
think
haven't seen it. I'm assuming
Yeah.
from what I.
we got to have a
what I read.
follow-up bonus episode where you've seen Poor Things and we talk about it.
Yeah.
I will say that it's like a child discovering their body, and it's like fun. Like I mean, what I mean is not having
Nothing
sex
about
with people.
that phrase seems fun.
Well, you have kids, so like you're gonna have to
Yeah.
deal with this at some point.
Sure.
That there is an exploration of sexuality that is there's a healthy way to do it for people that are still not necessarily having sex with other people, but just people exploring their own body. And
Sure.
I do think a lot of that is from that point of view of like a positive, this is like a little kid experiencing this. And she does age rather rapidly. So I think that is the perspective that they would want us to think that the early parts of the movie are taken from. Now, I don't know if that's successful or not. But I
it's a
think that's
little
what they would say.
of a Breaking Dawn, Twilight, Renesmee situation in terms of the rapid
I haven't
aging.
thought about that movie. First of all, I saw Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2 without having seen Part 1.
That's the way to do it. That's the one with the big fake out, right?
Yes, big fake out, which I thought was pretty cool, actually. And then what I loved about that was the final credits for that movie have really extended credits for like almost everybody that's been in any of the Twilight movies the entire time. Like
Really?
a
They
lush
include
photo
people
of.
who
I
weren't in the
feel
movie?
like it did,
Is that what
like
you
a
mean?
lush because it's ending the whole series.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so like a really nice photo of somebody with their name, like I that's my memory of it. I remember just being like, I feel like I'm seeing credits for people that weren't in this film.
They really needed to just put their mark on the animatronic baby. I know that the animatronic baby didn't wind up in the
Yes.
movie, but man, that thing is iconic. Brian, have you seen the animatronic baby from Breaking Dawn Part 2?
I have not, but I'm going to look at it right
that
now.
they didn't use because it was too creepy, and rightfully so.
Too creepy for
This is-
Twilight.
This is like the baby in American Sniper. Bradley Cooper.
Oh my God.
Look at that
Jesus
thing. It's
Christ.
so scary.
That's
But yes, I loved Zone of Interest. That was my favorite movie of last year. My second favorite was Anatomy of a Fall. Have you seen
Another
that?
one I
have
really
not
want to
yet.
see. This is the French trial movie, but
Oh my
I haven't
gosh!
seen it yet.
It's very possible you would like that more. It's so good.
I rented
it-
it. I watched 20 minutes and then I fell asleep, which is so shameful for somebody who watches trials fucking constantly. I'm better than
I
that.
think to me, falling asleep during a movie is not a sign that I don't like the movie.
100%. It's a sign for me. It's a sign that I'm almost 50, and also,
Yeah.
also I've always done it anyway.
It's my body is horizontal. That's what it does when it's horizontal. Just
Well, do you find that I find the environment of a movie theater is almost perfect for me to take a nap.
100%. Yes, I could
Yeah.
not agree more. It's like pressure's off, right? You're in this thing, especially I go see, when I do go see movies, it's often like there aren't a lot of other people in the theater. It's like midday during the week or whatever. Like on purpose, I'm not going during crowds. So there's
Right.
not a lot of noise, ambient noise except for the film. I find especially during like big action sequences, I tend to nod off.
Oh, every between acts 3 and 4 of a Marvel film, when there is a completely unnecessary plot twist and a big fight, I sleep right through that. Yeah. There was some, I can't remember if it was Iron Man. No, I think it was maybe Avengers Civil War that immediately started with a fight. Or Captain America Civil War, that is. I think it immediately started with a huge fight, and I sat down and immediately fell asleep. Because I don't care about the action sequences in those Marvel movies at all.
No, same.
I just think they're so boring.
Yes.
Nothing's going to happen to anybody.
you get such a beautiful sleep when you're in that like hypnagogic. You can kind of hear something happening. Like it's
Yep.
like being a kid and falling asleep with the TV on. That never goes away. There's just something
No.
so special about that sort of like half awake vibe. In a movie theater, it's air conditioned. It's lovely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
are you two in birth order?
I am the oldest of two, the older
Okay.
of two.
I'm an only child.
Oh, I'm youngest of 4. So my theory, which unfortunately has been blown by both of your responses, was that I really like I love falling asleep when I hear other people in the house like doing stuff. And I have never needed complete silence to fall asleep. So for me, being in a movie theater is just oh yeah, some kind of commotion's going on.
I'm a terrible sleeper. But there is something just so relaxing about there's another thing going on. Yeah, there's something else going on. I don't need to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
It's great. I
I
really
kind of
love
hope
it.
that's how it feels when you die, like you're just you're drifting into it. You hear it and you're barely there.
I think it's
You're into
very possible that is what happens. And I think that my not a fantasy, but my rumination about this is that you might even hear a bunch of commotion as people are trying to save you or relatives are nearby and I feel like you'll have sort of a floating sort of distance from it.
Yeah.
And being kind of oh, that's funny. They're trying to save me, but I'm leaving.
Well, I have vowed I'm going out screaming if I have anything to say about it.
I think my current theory is that you can actually probably live as not that this is 100% true, but I do feel like there's a little bit of if you want to stay alive, you'll stay alive. And I think what happens is people just get tired and they're I don't want to anymore. I'm not going to it
I
would
think
take a
there's an
lot of
element that,
energy.
yeah.
I was thinking about when you're drunk, there's moments when you're drunk or high where you could be no, I need to sober up right now. I need to really concentrate and focus on this thing that's happening. And then there's times where you're yeah, but I don't want to. You could do it if you wanted to. And I almost feel I know you think you're going to go out screaming, but I think at a certain point you'll just be I've screamed enough.
You hope you're saving the screaming for a lifetime. I don't know. I feel like as somebody with really bad anxiety and a long history of panic attacks, a panic attack is always, I'm dying right now. And
Yeah.
they're like mini bosses for actually dying. And I think the true triumph would be actually dying and being like, those panic attacks weren't so bad. I didn't need to have all those. This is fine. Like, that's the
I
goal.
think that is, I think almost 100% that's what's going to happen. Like, because I've been around people dying, and like,
same.
I think that
I was about to say, just to
actually,
get this joke out there, we both do comedy. We've both been around people dying.
yeah,
But anyway, sorry.
and it was ourselves on stage.
Yes. Yeah.
I think actually, like, so I've been around. I've like been right there when someone died, and I've been nearby to other people, like close to when they were dying.
Same.
And wait, was it the same person? Wait a minute.
I didn't
Oh,
look
right.
up,
Brian,
so it might have
Brian
been.
and I, we were both EMTs on the same shift.
Brian rapidly running away from the scene of the crime.
Yeah. Well, look, you don't want him to catch you. That's fun.
Yeah. But my hunch is actually that, like, there is there's a lot of worry about it that at the end you're just like, oh, what was all that for? Like, it wasn't.
Which is honestly true about most things, I think. Like, at least the stuff I chronically worry about, when it actually happens, which it does sometimes, I often find, and I know this is the classic thing, it's like, oh, that actually, I got through that fine. That wasn't the worst thing that ever. Why did I fucking worry about it so much? It happened and it wasn't too bad. So I think that's
There's like
true about
an
many things.
unhinged relief to that sometimes when it happens. Like when I did that, for the Witching Hour show, I did a VJ set. Technically, a disaster. Everyone was like, "No, you did fine," but it was worst case scenario for me. In the moment that I got off the stage,
I remember you
was
talking
like,
about this.
"Oh, fucking hell yeah! I'm in such a good mood. I've been like worrying about this for a whole month. Worst thing possible happened, and it's over. I don't give a fuck. Nobody has to apologize to me. I am chill."
In that case, the worst thing possible was what? Stuff just not working?
Yeah, stuff just not working. I was also VJing to my desktop for a full 60 seconds before I realized.
You can say vagina. That's fine.
I'm just glad that I didn't that I cleaned up my desktop, because if people had been staring at file icons long enough to see what they saw, I think I would not be relieved at how bad it went afterwards. That would be pure shame. It's bad. It's a wasteland on my desktop.
Have
Yeah,
y'all
it's
experienced actual, like, concrete disappointment from a fan base about something you put out?
Yes.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've put out a lot of albums, and there's always, has there been anything that's been a collective, like, widely regarded as a failure? No. With everything we put out, are there people screaming at us about how much they hate it? Absolutely, all the time. Like, so, I've never done something where it has just like been regarded as a total flop. But I think with everything we do, there's going to be some section of people who are like, they're fucking done. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. And,
and then they buy a shirt.
That's just part of it.
And continue their hobby horse of shitting on it because it's a recreational hobby.
We just, I want to hear your response to this too, Chris, but we just put out a new Ninja Sex Party album a couple of weeks ago, and the reactions generally were very good, but there were certainly a few people who were like, this is my least favorite album. Total didn't work for me at all, which fine. Like, I mean,
Is it a departure from your last ones? Musically, I mean.
It kind of is, yeah. Where we do a bunch of different styles
it's just
we
spoken
haven't
word
done before. Yeah, that's right. You know what I do? I don't know if I'll ever actually do this, but I do want to do. There are a couple things that I've been a part of where Ninja Brian has a Spotify link, like a profile, but it's not an official artist thing. So I want to put out. The idea of this album is it's called Ninja Brian Storyteller, and it's Ninja Brian reads you whatever. Ninja Brian reads The Fellowship of the Ring. And then it's 4 hours of just like.
Oh, you're not reading out loud.
Yeah.
I mean, Somebody
be
will
good.
like it.
That's ASMR. You could do
It's
it.
essentially an ASMR album. Yeah.
I had an
it-
idea at one
yeah.
point to have a podcast that was it was going to be called like Your Ride Home, and
Mm-hmm.
it was going to be the sounds of you getting into my car and be like, "Hey, how's it going?" And just like having like, "Oh, how did that thing go?" Leaving a space for someone to respond. Oh, that's
love
cool.
that.
Okay. Oh, I got to get some gas. Hold on a sec. And just a 25-minute recording of just
That's
you.
a great
You
idea.
can, yeah.
Yeah. You want
What's-
anything? No?
Yeah.
All right. You sure?
Yeah.
What's your? Have you done anything where people thought it was just like it just didn't work? And also, you do improv a
Well-
lot, so I mean that's a big part of improv for one.
Well, I was just on After Midnight, and
Yeah.
on the Reddit from After Midnight, I was already dubbed the worst guest of all time on the show.
What?
Yeah. People seem to enjoy it generally, but a few people were like,
I thought you were
I've
great.
had a
I
couple-
watched the clips you posted or were tagged in or whatever.
Yeah, it was
but,
really
like,
fun.
I thought you were great.
I mean, I've been doing a lot of stand up this year, and I've had just people occasionally on a YouTube clip or something will just be like, "This guy is terrible."
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But
I get that all the time.
The
Yeah.
real reason I ask is because I'm working on my new Edinburgh Fringe show, and my show from last year, which I believe both of you came to see the taping of, which was very
did.
nice that y'all showed up, was sort of received pretty well by a lot of people, and sort of went way better than I thought it would go.
I was going to say that seems like an understatement given what I know about it. Like people
Yeah.
rightfully loved it. It was a great. I do want to talk about it later, but I thought it was a great
Yeah.
show. It was really fun.
But I do feel that I feel this in the back of my. I was like, "There's no way I can make a second show that is received as well as this one was." So I'm in this little trench of just like, I'm gonna try to put this second show together, but I don't know how I can make it as good as the first one. I just kind of have to like make it and
Just
see what
make it.
happens.
I had that to some extent. We have this this like video game hip hop trio, Starbomb, where we do hip hop songs about Nintendo and stuff. And we had our first album was now just about 10 years ago, and we put that out, and it like was a shockingly big hit for what it was. Like we printed up 500 copies to sell, and they we ended up selling way more than that. And it was like, fuck,
Like
how do we
513.
13? Yeah, exactly. But then when with Ninja, this is before Ninja Sex Party had any kind of success at all. Starbomb, it's me and Dan from NSP, and Dan's partner on Game Grumps, Aaron. And it's the three of us, and NSP had like never sold an album basically at this point. And then this album comes out and it like blows up. And so it was the only thing I'd ever done that was like a hit, a big success. And I
didn't
remember
know
in
that.
writing that. Yeah. Because
I was like into NSP for a while before Starbomb dropped, so I was like, oh shit, new
that's
stuff.
interesting. Yeah, well, without NSP it only really got kind of popular when Dan joined Game Grumps, and he joined the year that first Starbomb album came out. So we hadn't put out a new NSP album in a while, and it was like nothing we did sold. Like I'm sure a couple people bought stuff, but it was not any kind of actual revenue or numbers. So when that first Starbomb came out and actually people bought it, it was like, fuck, how do we do a second one of those? And I remember being really, really in my head about writing it and being like, it has to be, I didn't want to like change the formula too much, but I wanted to make it better and more interesting and everything. And I remember talking with Aaron from Game Grumps about it, and he was just like, here's the secret, dude. Don't worry about it. Because this guy had like viral videos out the ass, Like he's like, you'll just make the album, it'll be fucking fine, and if it does well, it does well.
This
If it
guy
doesn't,
is
it
the
doesn't.
Rick Rubin of video game content creators.
Yeah, but he was also 100% right. And after kind of worrying about that for a few weeks and having a bit of writer's block, eventually I just had to be like, fuck it, we just got to get these tracks done. Let's do them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've felt that before. It's rough.
Leighton, did you break through with Dream Daddy, or was there something before there?
Oh no, Dream Daddy was the breakthrough, and I was also a month shy of 20 when that came out, coming from being in art school. So So yes, the thing that you guys are talking about is very, very real. Have not had a level of success, a comparable level of success, like metrics wise, since then. And I think hitting it out of the park so hard on accident at this point, almost 8 years later, feels like pressure's a little bit off because it's such a high bar to clear that I'm just going to do the stuff. I'm just going to make stuff. It's like, I really appreciate the workman, like a real workman's attitude that like Willem Dafoe, for example, has towards acting. Or there's like a Mads Mikkelsen quote that's like, every project that I do is the next big thing and I give all my energy to it. And then when it's over, it's done, on to the next thing, which will now be the next. But, it's just like giving a thing your all to the amount that you can do. And it doesn't really matter how big or small it is, just show up. So I find that refreshing.
I knew a lot of scientists who thought that way too. The paper they were working on is the most interesting paper they've ever written. This is the one. It's so awesome. I'm so into it. All right, that paper's out. Let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah, it's like not putting all your eggs in one basket, but just giving it as much as you can at the time that you can, and knowing that like you shouldn't mourn over that when it doesn't hit maybe the way that you want to, because there's always a next thing.
Right.
Yeah, Brian, I think you told me that math is like a young person's game.
Well, I think I think maybe what I said was people feel that way, but I think it's less true. There used to be a big, so I remember when I was, I don't know, in college or grad school or something, the thing you heard was, if you don't have your big result by the time you're 30, you're never going to have one. Yeah. And that is just not true. And I mean, to some extent it's true, because if you don't have that big result, then it's harder to get to the position where you can be a faculty member. And so there's like a career reason for it. But intellectually, a lot, I don't know if this is just because kind of the way science works has changed with electronic preprints, or maybe it was never true to begin with. But a lot of the people I think of as the best people out there in theoretical physics are not the youngest. Like it's kind of a wide range. There's some people who are crushing it who are, 25, and there are people who are crushing it who are 70. And it's a wide range of people. And same thing with math. Like math also really rewards being a weirdo loner who goes off and thinks about something for 20 years and then comes back and you're like, hey, guess what? I proved this thing. And it's like, fuck, whoa, that's okay. Great. I mean, it doesn't always work out. Sometimes those papers are wrong because they were not talking to enough people in the process. But there's something about math specifically, even more than theoretical physics, that really rewards, like, I'm just going to go think about this really hard for a long time. And I think in some sense that's easier for older people, certainly people with tenure, than it is for younger people.
I still want to put a pin in this side project that I've been talking about with Brian for 5 years now, which I might have mentioned last time I was here.
Maybe longer, because it was, I think,
because of the pandemic. It was before pandemic.
I feel like it was a couple years before COVID even.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So the idea is, I was going to call it 15 minutes to physics, but it's probably more a math thing, but it's catchier, 15 to physics, which is I just meet with Brian online 15 minutes a week, starting from my base knowledge now, to get to where I can understand this math problem that my nephew was given over a summer when he was finishing up at the UT math department, which I brought up now. Just Leighton, I'll read it to you. We can work on this together. Send me your solution to this at your earliest convenience. Consider a chiral multiplet. With no further constraints, the independent components are a complex scalar, a Weyl fermion, and an auxiliary field. These transform linearly under supersymmetry. Let us impose the additional constraint that whatever this symbol is to the second power equals 0. It's like this with a line through it.
It's phi.
Phi squared equals 0.
Phi squared equals 0.
What are the independent that survive this additional constraints? They transform non-linearly under supersymmetry. How do they transform? And I showed this to Brian, and Brian was like, oh yeah, I understand that.
Well, so I am at a a super advantage here because not only am I a theoretical physicist, this is like literally the exact area of my expertise was supersymmetry. So this was, my big papers are all on this exact field. So
I like the idea of how many 15-minute episodes would it take for me to understand what this is talking about.
Oh my God.
What I think is
That's a great
interesting
idea.
about that, is there's like, honestly, I don't think it would take you very long to like sort of get it,
Yeah.
I think that's maybe an hour, honestly. I don't think it's that long. Maybe it's a couple hours. But
Wow,
then
so
there's
your
the
job's
level-
not that big a deal, I guess, is what you're saying? Really, anybody can do those jobs you had?
that is kind of true. But then there's a level of like, could you understand it from a math perspective and like be able to do calculations with it, which is a
Well,
different
yeah,
thing.
of course. That's the point. I got to be able to do the calculations.
That's a different thing. So I could explain what that means to you for a price, but the basic idea of what are those things kind of vibe wise, that's not hard. The idea of like,
Gotcha.
could
Physics
you like
vibe check.
do that calculation and figure out, if I gave you one of those fields and asked you how it transformed under a supersymmetry transformation, could you write that down and blah, blah, blah. That's more involved. Although honestly, what's interesting about that particular problem is it's really just an algebra problem. That's not even a calculus problem. So in terms of like the actual math required to do it, it's not that much for that particular
I thought your credentials were impressive, but they don't really sound like much at this point.
That's wise. Well, on that note, everybody, this is Late Night with Brian Wecht. Sitting across from me, we have Leighton Gray. Say hi, Leighton.
Hi, that's me. My eyes have long since glazed over. And mystery guest. Who are you?
Hello, I'm Chris Grace. I'm an actor and a comedian.
Yeah, and now two-time guest on this podcast.
Two-time guest. I'm in the Two Timers Club. How many people are in the Two-Time Club?
Not too many, I'd say.
A good handful because we're lazy.
Well, there are some like close friends who are like on all the time. Let's count them. Maybe there's 15 people. I'd say
Okay.
something like that. But I will say that I think, Chris, you are. If I'm getting my dates right, and I didn't actually check when you were last on the pod, I believe you are the only two-timer within a calendar year. Not a calendar year, within a 12-month period.
12-month period.
Yeah.
I know I made the year-end roundup, which I was very happy to have
you
made.
did.
Oh, yeah, of course you did.
Now, Leighton, the thing I'm curious about is what are your favorite Mads Mikkelsen movies?
Ooh. Well, number one
To
is
look this one up.
Rihanna's Bitch Better Have My Money. That's pure Kino. You see that music video?
Wait, is he
Right.
in the music video for that?
He's the bitch.
I haven't seen that.
really?
That's great.
Yes, he is. It's so iconic.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I love that video. But there is a very funny interview where somebody expresses the exact same thing that you both just did, and he's just like, "I was the bitch." Anyway,
Have you seen Another Round?
No, I haven't. In thinking about
that is
actual movies I've seen him hit in, The Hunt. I haven't. That was like the first movie I ever logged on Letterboxd like a decade ago or something.
The Hunt is incredible.
Yeah, it's great. I have been meaning to rewatch it. But in terms of my primary exposure to him is NBC Hannibal, obviously.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite Mads movie?
First of all, I love The Hunt. I think he is in like a Mission Impossible movie, isn't he?
He's in James
as a
Bond. He's in a James Bond.
Oh,
movie.
James
A couple of
Bond.
them.
Yes. Is he the one that hits Daniel Craig's balls over?
I believe that's, you know what? A scene that really has stayed with me because at first I didn't quite understand it. Despite being a ball owner, I was like, what? Do you remember this, Leighton? Do you know what?
I have not
What
seen
we're
a
talking
single
about?
James Bond movie in my life.
Okay. Well,
Wow.
basically, Chris, am I explaining this right? He makes Daniel Craig sit in a chair that he's kind of naked, that he's carved out the bottom on, and then he
Yes.
smacks the bottom with a tennis racket. something.
or like a pendulum or something. I remember just being like, this is very homoerotic.
Yes, very. And also, I was like, well, how low are they hanging exactly? Because it feels like that could, that could go either way. Like,
yes.
Well, and also the ambient temperature of the room would affect how dangly the scrotum is, right? So if that's a cold room, and I have to admit, it looked pretty cold, that's going to be less painful than in like a sauna or something where the balls would really dangle.
Well, Mads Mikkelsen is, I think he's Danish maybe, but he's Scandinavian in some way. So he might like a sauna-like level.
That's true.
But it's not clear why you need that special chair to hit someone in the balls. Like
it was pretty elaborate, yeah.
I didn't realize that Bond lore established that James Bond's balls hang low.
Yeah, well, apparently, that's right. Yeah. That's what the two O's are in 007.
And the 7 is the penis. I think he's got something wrong with his eye in that movie or something. Like he cries blood maybe at some point.
That's so metal.
That sounds familiar, yeah.
My favorite movie of his is Another Round, which is amazing. Which is this movie about these like 4 high school teachers that are all friends, and they just decide. It feels European in a way that like I don't know how you would sell this in an American movie.
This one, yeah.
But they all decide, like, you know what? We're all gonna just drink a little bit every day. We're gonna drink a little bit of alcohol and see how it improves our lives, and like. It doesn't go that great for some of them, but they just make a little club. Like, okay, we're gonna start by having like a couple ounces of whiskey today, and and then they get together and they're like, oh, how did it go? Like, well, I was in a better mood because of it or whatever. And then it doesn't go crazy. It's just kind of like what would sort of genuinely happen if 4 people did that. Like, a couple that might not handle it that well.
Isn't that also just Europe? I mean,
yeah. There's something kind of naive about the way they're like, let's do this as an experiment kind of thing.
Yeah. From living in England for a few years, one thing I noticed there is people regularly, and what's considered like a normal amount of alcohol there would be that dude's got a problem amount of alcohol here. Like,
yes.
The amount of, and I think this is true about Scandinavia too, like the amount people drink is, on a regular basis is significantly larger than most people I know here.
And also I would say time of day, like when they start is much earlier.
We I worked at a university. We had we'd go to lunch it was not quite a cafeteria, but a little lunch place. People would regularly have a pint with lunch at work. Which is so fun. I did it like maybe 5 times over the course of a few years. And it was always like on a Friday when I didn't have much going on. But there would be people who would have a beer with lunch every single day.
This is at Oxford?
Queen Mary.
Queen Mary. This is why no one at Queen Mary thought you were cool, though.
That's true. Yeah.
Only the one.
Yeah. But yeah, I couldn't believe the time of day too. Like, and I know in some places, at least in other parts of Europe, like they're having beers in the morning. I remember being in Barcelona and watching old Spanish guys drinking a beer and eating, potatoes or whatever.
I hate drinking, but that sounds great. I mean, if I think about me in an older age, that does sound pretty delightful. But I feel like I drink once every 6 months and I'm like, I'm fine. I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish. On the one hand, I do kind of wish I liked drinking more because there's so much appealing culture around it. Or like there's just a lot of, especially when I'm like in Edinburgh for Fringe, there's a lot of like, let's go for a drink afterwards or whatever. And I'm always just like, whenever I drink, I just feel sleepy immediately, and it's whatever.
And pubs are the best. I love a pub.
Yeah.
Like pubs are awesome.
I like the pub culture. I just don't like drink that much. So often I'll just be there drinking like a Pepsi Max, as they say in the UK.
On the rocks.
Yeah.
Brian, after we saw Chris's show with your sister, you asked the group if we wanted to go to a bar afterwards. And what was my response to that?
Oh, I mean, I can't really exactly remember Do you remember your precise response? I mean, it was a no. It was a decided no.
It was what always happens. Anybody will suggest, let's go to a second location. And that sounds terrible to me unless it's to
right.
go get ice cream.
Yes.
Because I'm a child and I will happily go get an ice cream. I'm not going to a whole new place to start a tab and continue to drink, but a little treat.
Wait, what about a hipster pub that's mostly ice cream?
I like that idea a lot.
You
Yeah,
know,
well,
I think you could have.
Affogato with booze in it.
Yeah.
I think you could have done that. I think there's a couple places in Koreatown that have that vibe, that have like an ice cream mochi boba. Like I've picked up boba at a couple places near because I live near Koreatown, where like I was like, oh, it's like 11 o'clock at night and there's a bunch of people here just having a late night boba and hanging out like in a bar type
That's a
situation.
great idea. Yeah, I do. Well, I do remember during that conversation, Leighton, I suggested to you, I had been thinking it would be great to open a bar called Second Location. So if you ask someone on a date, you know, you could be like, oh, I met him at a second location. And all your friends would be like, no, why? Never. You know? But I do like the idea of like a pub, but it's a pub environment or whatever, you know, kind of thing, but they don't serve alcohol. Right? Like they serve
Now that sounds
ice cream.
like a thing that I don't want to do because I don't want the crowd that would get, like, I feel like I would go in there and everyone's talking about like Steven Universe and shit, and I'm not about that. Like, I would rather be in a room with a bunch of like, you can't hold an open flame near any of these people or they will combust due to being so thoroughly soaked in alcohol. Despite not liking drinking, I will take that over what I'm imagining for the late night ice cream shop.
That's interesting because I have often lamented, like, okay, I don't think I really have a problem with like Steven Universe, Rick and Morty type things, but sometimes I get a little depressed that like I am 50 years old and a lot of my friends are in their late 30s and 40s and 50s, and like all they want to talk about is Steven Universe. And I'm like, could we talk about the Zone of Interest instead? You know, like, could we talk? I don't know. I don't have to only talk about like Kurt Vonnegut or whatever, you know, but like, I don't necessarily only want to talk about like Rick and Morty and Death Note, which are, you know, both of which I like.
Yeah. And I very similarly, I don't want to shit on these things, but it's this like toothlessness that I don't enjoy or fuck with very much at all. Like, I don't, if people are like, and this is truly not me trying to be like an edgelord, but
I love what you're about to say.
If someone's pitch to me is like, it's really heartwarming, I'm immediately fucking out. Because I like having heartwarming interactions in my real life and having heartfelt relationships with people. I want my media to be nasty.
Oh, well then you're gonna love this movie I watched over the weekend, Wonka.
Oh no.
It was actually pretty good.
Was it heartwarming?
You know what? A little bit. And I have to say, I went in expecting a complete piece of shit, and I enjoyed the movie, and I did fall asleep during it.
Oh,
nice.
Here's a version of media theory that it's not fully articulated, but I've been thinking about lately, which is like a lot of times you talk to someone and they're like, I just want to see movies to escape. You know, my life is so hard. I want to see a movie where things are happy and nice, whatever. And I was thinking like, first of all, I don't feel that way, right? But I was like, oh, I think I do have a form of escapism, which is I want to escape to a world where, not that I want to escape to the world of Zone of Interest or Anatomy of a Fall, but I want to escape to a world where life is seen as a complex thing. Like where people see things, like I feel like in my life I don't have a lot of that. So I want to escape to a world where I'm connecting with someone who sees the world in nuanced ways. So like I think I am going through escapism, but for a different target.
Yeah, I think similarly, the emotional catharsis that you get from something that's like stressful or distressing is more satisfying to me than something that's like sweet or whatever, because then that's like obviously energy that I have in my body just because my brain doesn't work right, and being able to not just be in a dissociated baseline and to like have something that triggers that feeling really hard. Like watching Zone of Interest, I was like shaking. It was, you know,
Yeah.
it's a very intense, visceral experience. And like coming out of that, I definitely walked around an empty Macy's a little bit shell-shocked afterwards, just having an existential crisis. And then after that, it's like, oh, I feel good. I have so much to think about. I'm going to think about this and chew on this, and it's going to give me shit to chew on for a long time. And I get to
Yeah.
read, you know, analysis of it and think about it some more. Like, I want that. I don't want a movie telling me exactly what just happened and it's all wrapped
Yes.
up neat and everybody's happy and everything's fine. Like, that's going to fall out of the back of my head. I don't care.
This is, I think, I totally agree. And this is what places us, I think, in a minority of culture consumers, where most people, it seems, do want just a thing they can stop thinking about. They want to go,
Yeah.
they want to see it for 2 hours or whatever time it is, and then just stop. And I 100%, and this isn't always the case, but I often want the thing that I'm going to be confused about for a little bit and have to think about and maybe revisit, maybe watch a couple things again and like get into it.
And I like something
Yeah.
that's actively hostile towards the audience. This is something that I think about a
I
lot.
love it too.
In terms
I
of
love
like,
when I was listening to Radiohead, OK Computer, and at one point they go, "This is what you get when you mess with us." I was like, God, he hates me.
Yeah.
Chris, you've hit the perfect intersection of Leighton's interests here.
Yeah. My entire performing career has been people who are hostile to the audience, right? Like every, most of what I do is character stuff. All of those characters hate the fucking audience and want them to be there and shut up and watch the fucking show, like I love playing those characters. It's so fun.
Yeah, and I think it's when thinking about how much I adore Michael Haneke. I mean, can you get any worse director-wise in terms of this guy fucking hates you, except for maybe Lars von Trier, but his own self-loathing outweighs his loathing for the audience in a way that I find uncouth. But nobody's
Yes.
Haneke. Nobody's going to beat Haneke on that front. But
No, I was going to say this is perfect because I have just recently read. First of all, I love Michael Haneke, and I have just read. I saw a TikTok that was, these are the 5 books that were the most disturbing books that I never want to read again. And then I read like 4 of the 5 books.
Chris,
And
what
I
were
read them
they?
in, like-
Yes,
This is what I
please,
always
you
Google
gotta tell us.
when I look for book recommendations. That's my favorite
So
shit.
the first one was Cows by Matthew Stokoe.
Stocko, yeah.
So have you read this book?
I haven't, but I know the deal with it because it's always the first one to come up on the list. What did you think of
Okay.
it? I always see mixed feelings on it.
It is like Catcher in the Rye crossed with like David Cronenberg body horror kind of stuff. It's pretty good. It is pretty harrowing.
It's
it
like
does have,
splatter punky, right?
yeah, I believe this is in a genre called splatterpunk, which I'd never heard of before. Some of these books, like, they are really gross. Like, they are just like they do have descriptions of things that I'm just like, oh, I'm having trouble reading this. but they are also a little bit like a little kid being like, yeah, I'm gonna fucking shock you with this thing.
That's my
whatever.
issue with splatterpunk. Like, I want to
Yeah.
like it, but it's so much like Garbage Pail Kids. Like, and then they vomited, and they were bleeding, and then
Yes.
there was vomit in the blood, and then there was poopy in the
That's-
blood.
100%. Like it's like Catcher in the Rye crossed with Two Girls, One Cup, basically.
I was trying to think of the David Cronenberg cow movie, and the best I could come up with was Crimes of the Moocher.
Have you seen Crimes of the Future?
I can't handle that shit. No, I have not seen Crimes of
Oh,
the
it's
Future. I have
come
no
on,
intention.
it's tame for Cronenberg. That's Cronenberg at his most tame, maybe
Tame
least
for
sexual.
Cronenberg. Well, look, I can deal with Existence. I can deal, of course.
I think
You've
you mean,
seen The
I think you mean
Fly.
Existenz. Is
Thank you.
Thank you,
Capital
Chris.
X, capital.
Thank you.
Capital X, capital Z. Right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
It might be an ad. I don't know. But Dead Ringers?
Never seen it. Been scared of it.
Dead Ringers
Crash.
is amazing.
Everyone says it's great. Crash. Nope. I worry about that. Fly. I love the Fly.
You're afraid of the
yeah.
sexual awakening you'll have if you watch Crash. I just bought it on Criterion because I've wanted it forever.
I can't fuck my car, Leighton. I use that thing to get places.
That's
I
a
don't think
bad
you fuck
attitude.
I don't think you don't fuck the car, right? Don't you fuck while you're crashing the car or
yes.
something
Yeah.
like that?
I believe
Yeah.
that's what it is.
That's my favorite Cronenberg. I accept that about myself. It's the best book to movie adaptation of all time. Like, I love the J.G. Ballard book.
It's the best movie called Crash for sure.
It is.
By
I
a
got
million
so
miles.
confused when that other one came out. I was like, don't they know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So wait, what are the other books on the list?
Okay, there's a book called The Girl Next Door, which is a true
by
crime
Jack
book.
Ketchum.
Yes.
I liked
is
that
pretty
one. Okay,
rough
it
going.
was because it's based on the Sylvia Likens case.
Yes. There is a book I haven't read on that list was called Tampa. Haven't
Oh
read
yeah,
that one.
Elisa Nutting.
And then
It's pretty
the one
good.
that I did read, which I genuinely enjoyed, was called Hog by Samuel Delaney.
I've not heard of this one.
So Samuel Delaney is a black science fiction writer from, I think this came out in the 60s or was written in the 60s, but was like not allowed to be released.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a queer writer. It's like, I think it's funny. The descriptions in it are insane. Like it is like they do sexual things that are just like, I mean, I've done a lot of sexual things. And there's things in that book that I'm just like, this is not physically possible. Like this is, so it becomes exaggerated. to me.
I know
But
the guy you're talking about. This author. There was like a big profile of him. I don't know, a year or so ago. I think.
Well, the thing is, this book is kind of heinous, right? But he's a well-respected
Yes.
sci-fi writer. He
Yeah,
wrote Dahlgren. And he wrote a lot of like well-respected books.
Yeah.
So it is kind of interesting that in this 60s and 70s period, there was a window where you could like write something real. Like none of the three of us could put out something like this and then also have like a mainstream or legit career in any way. We'd have to only be the like the niche.
Outre. Yeah.
Yeah. But he sort of like wrote this and then went back to like writing like, you know, just regular SF books that people liked.
Good for him.
Yeah. And I think it was an expression of queerness as well. Oh my God. So like, but I will say there's an element to that book that is the structure of it. There's something about it that is very funny to me because of the way it's like, because of like kind of what happens in it. And so I don't, if you're going to read it, I'm not going to say any more, but like, whereas Cal's just kind of seems like, I'm going to try to gross you out for the entirety of this book. Hog one is Cal's and one is Hog. Feels like I'm going to try to gross you out, but it's for almost like one specific punchline in the whole book. And so I appreciated that.
Yeah.
There's such a sense of humor to a lot of stuff that's like this. It's a thing that I think about a lot with
People are pretty self-aware about it, right?
Yeah, as much, you know, I'm always on the most fucked up book I've ever read, like fucked up Reddit movie, disturbing movie, like I'm all over it. I'm on it. That's what I've been doing for years. Everybody talks about a Serbian film like it is the most repulsive thing, and people talk about that movie like the movie is just the movie within the framing device. Like, there is a framing device of this movie that is doing a lot, that is commentating on the movie within the movie that is full of repellent stuff and the making of that repellent stuff. People talk about it like there isn't like an entire fucking social, geopolitical commentary in that movie because they're like, so they can't get past the shit that is in that movie that I'm not going to say. But that drives me kind of nuts because people take this stuff that's so extreme completely seriously and with no sense of humor in a way that I just loathe.
Yeah, like, I mean, I think you can see Funny Games as like a dark comedy.
Yeah, it's funny. The remake is especially
like-
funny. They're like hitting the comedy beats harder than the original, I think.
Like even the like opening credits of Funny Games, which have been copied by many people at this point,
Yeah.
where there's just like a nice, like like what? Not tableau. What is it called? Like a
I was
nice
going to
just
say
image.
Tableau.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, like this awful John Zorn jazz music and the whatever about John Zorn. Like,
Yeah, no, I like a lot of John Zorn, but absolutely, you're right. Yes.
and then the credits just hitting you, which has been in like Cabin in the Woods.
Yes.
Was also in
right.
Difficult People, the Billy Eichner.
Yeah. Yes. I like
has
difficult
that.
people a lot. Yeah.
But the credits are like that.
Yes,
like,
that's absolutely, yep.
I think that's fun. Like it's just a funny rhythm or something.
Well, and also horror is so on the razor's edge of comedy too, because like a jump scare is set up just like a punchline, and a good jump scare can also be a punchline. Like Toby Hooper gets that shit. That dude does a mathematically perfect jump scare every goddamn time, even in his like bad movies. Like, oh man, I can't remember the name of it. Terrible movie. It's about a hotel. And there's like one jump scare in it that, despite it being a shit movie, it's like I was worth it for that. That's perfect.
I don't think I had seen this last time I was here, but like I appreciated the comedy bones in Barbarian very much.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I think, I mean, that guy came from Whitest Kids You Know, and then he directed Barbarian. It's like
The director of Barbarian is a Whitest Kids You Know guy? I had no idea.
Yeah, did you not know that?
Barbarian, I'm in no danger of seeing, but I did not know he was a Whitest Kids You Know.
Wait, no, Brian, you would like that movie. You would really like it.
Okay.
You don't think you can handle it?
Look, I don't. I'm pretty tenderhearted with such things. So I from what I read, it seemed like it might be a little much. But if Leighton, I do trust you. If you think I could handle it.
I wouldn't send you into something. It's the same way that you didn't want to watch Saw and then we showed you Saw and it was super goofy, right? It's like Barbarian is not nearly on that level and also is way more of a comedy, in my opinion. Remember that my brain's messed up. So in my opinion, it's more of a comedy.
I generally agree with you. I think a lot of the things people don't regard as comedies are secretly comedy.
No, it's super funny. I've never seen a crowd lose their shit over tape measure or physical comedy as hard and as long as we all were during that movie. It was really delightful.
I think that I generally think it is kind of scary, but I think you would like it because it is very satisfying from a rhythm comedy point of view. There are just some edits in that, like there's a very abrupt shift in the middle that has a very funny cut to like a person that you didn't expect, and it's just like there's just I've watched it. I think I saw that twice, and I really appreciated, like the second time I was like, oh, this part is just gonna hit really well. Like it's just timed really well. And then there are the same thoughts are applied to some really good suspense moments. But I think you would like it because structurally it's really interesting. Like from a screenwriting point of view, like it's got a couple of like leaps that are just like, wait, what's going on? And then like the way the pieces fit together is really interesting.
It's cool. It shouldn't work in many ways, but it does. And Chris, that needle drop at the end is in my regular rotation. And so I've been thinking about this movie a lot recently every time it comes on, because it's, as far as needle drops go, that's a pretty fucking good one.
Like many horror movies people talk about, I read the Wikipedia plot summary and some various other things of it. So I remember it? Not exactly. But with any of those movies, the plot, you can never tell anything from a plot summary. Like
my pitch to you is, I think you should watch it, and then you should have my friend Matthew Patrick Davis on as a guest, because Matt played the mother in that movie.
No way!
Yeah.
Oh shit!
Sure. So I think you should have him on and discuss it. Speaking of needle drops, Anatomy of a Fall, best needle drop of the year, 2023.
Yeah? Oh.
Yes, there's or best use of a song, and that's all I will say.
Okay.
But close second is the last song in Saltburn.
Oh my God, that one took me the fuck out. As an old school Tumblr vet, hearing that song in that context. Whew.
Yeah.
Okay, you can say what the song is. I haven't seen it. What's the song?
Murder on the Dance Floor.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know who it's by.
I don't know either. I just know when the music video was like just the thing circulating. It was on every like fandom playlist for any semi bad guy. But people are really down on Saltburn, and I adored that
I thought it was
movie.
always fun.
Barry Keoghan is just like a joy, and I love
Yes.
how this ties back around to the Steven Universe thing. People's barometer for what's weird, especially sexually, is like 2 inches off the
yeah.
floor.
Oh, it doesn't exist, basically.
Everyone freaking out about that movie. Y'all, come on. It's not that weird. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Live a little. Live a little.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, when I saw Eyes Wide Shut, I remember just being like, this is what straight people think what a crazy sex club is. Like what Eyes Wide Shut is missing from the like sex club vibe is, I guess I can only speak for like gay sex clubs, but like way more crazy shit is happening in a gay sex club next to 2 guys eating cheese puffs talking about Drag Race. You know? And it's like 3 feet from them to like some crazy sexual act.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same with people being like, Oppenheimer's sex scene was too far.
People said that? What?
Yeah, it was all.
I just thought, again, I thought the women in Oppenheimer were terrible characters. Like, I was just like,
They had nothing to do.
I feel like Florence Pugh shows up and immediately takes her shirt off. Like, I was just like, what's going on? Like, what? And then I read that like Kitty Oppenheimer had like a really interesting life.
Yeah, she was awesome. She would like hide sneakers under her dress so that when she was at communist demonstrations, she could book it out of there before the cops could get her. Like, she was awesome. I have big problems with Oppenheimer, but
well, and then my other thing about I really did enjoy it as a piece of cinema, but like at the end where he's like giving a lecture and he's sort of feeling guilt about all the Japanese people that he killed. There's a sequence where he's like giving this lecture and he kind of sees some of the students as if they are victims of the bomb.
Right. Yes.
And I'm
Their
like,
faces are all like melted and stuff. Right.
but it's not even that far.
but like, no, it's more like this lady's holding a rail. She fell down and or whatever, and the light looks weird.
It's like peeling Elmer's glue off of your face kind of effect.
Yeah.
It's really nothing.
I thought the student that he's looking at, that's actually not a Japanese person. That's just a person with dark hair. Like,
It's like
I don't-
Christopher Nolan's daughter, if I recall correctly. Like, it's somebody. So that's funny.
I do think it's like kind of wild that you can make an entire film about like blowing up Japan and like have no consideration whatsoever of all the people that died. Like all of the many, many civilians that died in that act. Or, I mean, it's part of the greater perspective of history where we're just like, oh yeah, I mean, we saved so many lives by doing that. It's like, what? It's amazing that we've contextualized that to be like, yeah, we were able to just kill so
as
many
kind
civilians.
as kind of a good thing, right?
Yeah.
This is a movie about how this
regarded by
guy
many
is
people.
sad.
Yeah.
It made him really
exactly.
sad. Which,
Yeah.
if you're going to do that and do that movie, at least like represent Oppenheimer like the fucking weirdo he was. Like,
Yeah.
he was
Yeah.
histrionic and weird, and everybody was in love with him, and clearly very mentally ill. And you just get, because of like the time structure of that movie and the fact that it's edited like a TikTok, you just kind of see him being cheekbones the whole movie. Like, he doesn't emote really.
Cheekbones Murphy.
Cheekbones Murphy. That's him.
For me, it's his eyes. His eyes are insanely like
eyes are
compelling
awesome.
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're really.
About the Steven Universe of it all, the thing I've been thinking about lately is how do we reconcile having. There's not a lot of snobbishness going on in our culture right now. It's seen as like a thing you shouldn't be, right?
Yeah.
How do we reconcile the desire to have like it seems like you're not even allowed to say that you have like elevated tastes in movies or anything, right?
Because you're pretentious. People only pretend to like that stuff. And that, when people say, people must just be pretending to like this. Like, okay, so are you admitting that it's so normal for you to pretend to like stuff? That's just what you assume everyone's doing? I don't pretend to like shit. If anything, if I'm having a polite conversation with somebody who really, really liked something that I hated, I'm just going to shut up a little bit because they're excited. That's me pretending to like stuff. But people who are like, anybody who watches a David Lynch movie and says they like it, just admit that you're not thinking about it. Like, I'm doing an uncharitable take back, but I'm sorry that you had to think about it and that it didn't immediately hand you a slip of paper that says exactly what it means.
But this is, there's this general movement towards. So I think one thing I think about a lot is there's this, this mainstreaming of nerddom, right? Which has been now ongoing for the past 20 plus years.
Which hasn't worked out well for you at all, Brian.
But look, I can't complain. What used to be, when we were kids, Chris, like a nerd was not just an unpopular person. It's a different thing, although they were overlapping. But a nerd was someone who was really into certain stuff, right? And now you can, people use nerd. You can be a comedy nerd. You can be a whatever nerd, right? But one thing that has gotten replaced is what I used to think of a nerd as is someone who's like really into math or something. Now there's just this catch-all, which is just like, you like comic books, so I love Marvel movies. I'm such a nerd. And it is taking out the best parts of that, like the intellectual curiosity and the passion for like really getting into and getting deep into a specific, usually intellectual thing, and replace that entirely with just, hey, I like this pop culture behemoth. And that's such a loss, I think.
Well, so this is my question to you, is how do you reconcile these feelings with the concept, which you maybe don't subscribe to, of not yucking someone's yum, which I hate. I hate that phrase.
Yes.
And also,
I'm
because I feel like
that phrase. Yeah.
because I feel like it's not applied, Leighton, the way you describe, it's not applied the other way of like, oh, I like something really pretentious. You don't need to go out of your way to tell me that I don't actually like the thing or whatever. But like, I feel like that is heard a lot. It's like yucking someone's yum is mostly like, don't tell someone who likes Taylor Swift that they shouldn't like Taylor Swift or something.
Yeah. It's always on the side of the cultural behemoth of you are better if you like the popular thing. I think I will freely admit that I'm very pretentious. I also don't want to yuck other people's yums, but also we record this show a lot, right? We talk a lot on this show about media. Me away from a microphone is much worse. I am.
That's 100% true. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Brian, you can attest. I'm way worse. So even this is a watered down form of my actual opinions on media and things people say about media.
Also, one thing I think with this show and, with kind of the NSP fan base in general is that people in it are usually significantly younger than I am, right? And one thing, look, I had fucking bad taste as a kid. I'll admit it right now. Like we many
all
of
did.
us,
Who
we all
did?
did,
I don't admit to that. I will say that when I was like 15 years old, my favorite television show was 30 something.
That's amazing. That's
which
really,
which also I thought was so old when I was 15.
Oh no, of course, 100%. Yes, I remember when it was like the adult drama, right? The hip adult drama. Yes, I absolutely remember that being on, and but not watching it because I was watching, Quantum Leap or something.
What you were saying about your younger bad taste, Brian?
Yeah. So what I don't want to do. And what I'm always hesitant to do with the yucking yums is I'm reluctant to like scold children for being children, right? Like, okay, you really like this terrible thing. Well, you know what? You might not like it in 10 years. And it's not going to help you if I'm like, that's fucking stupid. Like, there are ways to respond generously to someone liking a stupid thing that doesn't involve calling them an idiot. And one thing I am very cognizant of it because I have a daughter too, right? I have a 9-year-old daughter who likes a lot of the YouTube channels she watches, Chris. By the way, we basically have now, this is recently, and we're kind of not doing YouTube anymore because it was getting really dire. So we have told her no more YouTube.
Thank God, because when I babysit her, I have the exact same reaction where it's like, I don't want to say anything, but I am about to seek out a lobotomy because this is so bad.
I mean, I was at Brian's house. I walked by, and Brian just walked into the room where his daughter was and said, "That's fucking stupid," and walked away. Which I thought that was
nice job.
That was a
idiot.
little harsh.
See you at dinner.
What are the popular YouTube channels for your daughter?
I'm very reluctant to mention any specific names, but I will. There's one guy in particular, Preston, who she really seems to like, who mainly, this is, as far as I'm concerned, without going into full like right-wing conspiracy territory, this is the worst YouTube can get. It's like overly performative reactions to a bunch of non-interesting things. Like, it's taking the worst things to respond to and then responding to them in the most heightened, insane way possible. It's like, a guy cracks an egg on a counter and this guy's like, it's like, it's so...
You're kind of selling me on it, unfortunately.
Well, and it's like his wife is a creator too, and it's a whole thing, and it's like...
And like, I'm kind of a misogynist, so I hate her a little bit more than I hate the guy.
They're both awful, and it's like, if this gets back, Preston, we'd love to have you on the show. So
you can apologize for your crimes.
Yeah, that's right. Look, by the way, feel free to defend this if anyone who wants to. You can love it as far as I'm concerned.
It's the worst. You articulating it like it's finding the worst thing possible and the worst reactions to it. The Roblox girls that she watches, that is particularly completely soul annihilating.
Well, because she also used to watch like interesting stuff. She used to watch Mark Rober, whose channel I love. He's really great. She used to watch gaming channels that Mr. A Game, a guest on the show, who I think is funny and like does interesting stuff. There are great examples of the kind of things she wants to watch out there. And what happened is those got less and less. Yeah, it's the algorithm, and also shorts. YouTube shorts, like it was just serving her bullshit in a way that we were like, in the last couple of weeks, we're like, nope. That's it. We can't do this anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I hear this because like it's like, in even being somebody that creates things sort of tangential to the world of like algorithms, it's like I do have this book called is it called Filter World or something that I want to read that just came out.
I don't know.
But basically about like how, I think the subtitle is like how algorithms have like flattened our culture, where it's weird. I think everybody knows this now, that these algorithms are like not actually good for us, right?
No,
like,
totally.
But I think, doesn't everybody know that now? Like,
have we just decided we don't care?
Yeah.
Like, it's hard enough as an adult recognizing you're in a spiral where it's like, I really should stop.
Oh, yeah.
I really should stop. I can't imagine being a little squishy brained child without any of the experience or discipline to do so. Like,
well, because also we don't have a situation where we're going 5 days a week to see a bunch of our friends and they're all talking about this TikTok that they all saw. And if I decided over the weekend, I'm going to try to like not do TikTok this weekend, and I go on Monday and now I'm like completely out of step with all my friends.
Yeah. And this, I'm feeling this very strongly too. At the age Audrey is, almost 10, there is a wide range of permissiveness in different households, right? Like once you get to like 13, 14, they pretty much all have phones and they're all watching TikTok and stuff. But at 9, 10...
going to rotten.com, etc.
Yeah, right. Something awful. There are kids like Audrey where we'll let her watch things at home, but there's no fucking way that kid's getting a phone anytime soon. Right. And then there are other kids in her class that have their own phones. By the way, this leaf blower will go away in just a moment.
It sounds like music to me.
I also thought it was music. I was going to ask if somebody's phone was ringing.
No, there's a leaf blower.
This is the real zone of interest.
So,
right.
So Audrey's friends are watching Serbian film.
Yeah, that's right.
And then
I think let's move on to some segments.
Okay,
right
or
sure.
Consider this. Consider this. I love the arc of this conversation, and I think
do too.
We have unplumbed depths. What if we skipped the segments? Because this is basically like an episode long what's poppin'. Like I honestly don't want to break up the flow. We haven't even asked Chris about his show, which we were both at and want to talk about.
Okay, you know what? I just worry about the revolt that will happen among our listeners if we skip segments. again?
We can do both. This is what I would say about the arc we're talking about, which is that I read a very uninsightful Substack recently that people were reacting to as if it was like so insightful. That was just about like literally the same thing about like, oh my God, people's attention spans are so low and blah, blah, blah. You can get a hit on TikTok with a song that's 10 seconds long or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, that's true. But like, this guy, Lex Fridman, who I have very mixed feelings about, but he has a YouTube show where he interviews people.
Yeah,
he just posted a 5-hour debate about Israel-Palestine that has like so many, it has so many views. And it's like a genuinely interesting debate or whatever. But like, I don't know. It's hard for me to argue that like no one is willing to pay attention to long form things when this guy can post a hit episode of his podcast that's 5 hours long.
Yeah.
The hardcore history dude can put up podcasts that are like so long.
Our friend Bomber Guy puts out a 4-hour plagiarism video that is like,
oh wait, this is part of the whole
hit. Like
what is the guy who got disgraced and everything, right?
Somerton, James Somerton.
But and also there is I think one thing I heard in an interview with the guy who wrote the Filter World book was that like podcasts are like currently out of the algorithm world, really. Like there isn't really a algorithm forward way to engage with podcasts right now, which is probably a good thing, right? So like this podcast and other ones that are like hours long have lots and lots of people devoting many listening hours per week to all these different shows that are like an hour plus long. So like there definitely is still a part of our brains that is willing to pay attention for like a while.
Here's my thing with that. God, it sounds so much like music, Brian. That is a musical fucking leaf blower out there.
Welcome to my house, like everything. If you think about it, everything's music, right?
Oh
like
my
the birds tweeting and a tree are like fucking music.
No.
When I hear a guy, sneezing on the street, that's music, right? Everything's music if you think about it.
What are you, a Pixar character? Shut up.
It's like jazz, man.
You're the Jacob Collier of like
of leaf
wherever
blowers,
you live.
Yeah.
What I was going to say was, for example, Brian, you watched Harry's video. When you were watching that 4-hour video, did you sit in front of your computer and just watch it doing nothing else?
No, I was driving basically for most of it.
Okay. I am somebody who, if I'm looking for videos on a channel or whatever, and they have one that's 4 hours, I am so in because I love long form content that I can put on in the background while I'm doing anything else, drawing, cleaning, whatever. It's never me sitting and directly engaging for 8 hours. It's always a passive thing. And so I think there's immediately engaging, I am only flicking through short form content. And then there is, I need noise while I do something else.
Gotcha.
And I don't think that takes anything away. Like, I appreciate having a little bit of ambivalence about the attention span stuff, but I think there could be an argument that the long form stuff is maybe even worse for the attention span thing, because it's like this, I need noise to function.
And long does not equal elitist, right, or advanced. So you can be like this awesome Bomber Guy video, which I loved. I thought it was great. He did a lot of work to put into that, but that is not, that is not like an intellectually demanding video to watch. And this is no slight on it whatsoever. It is a very well-researched thing that anybody can understand, right? You don't need to be highbrow to watch that video and get what he's talking about. He just hits you over the head with example after example after example of these people. But so I think that's a bit different and not necessarily at odds with what we were talking about before, which is people not wanting to think about something or engage in more highbrow things. I think there's an overlap there for sure, but they're not the same thing.
By the way, I will say that this is what I think lends a lot of power to Zone of Interest and to movies in general, because you are a captive audience and you cannot kind of like second screen Zone of Interest if you're watching it in the theater. Yeah. Which, by the way, Zone of Interest has a different sound mix if you see it in the theater than it does at home. Oh,
that's interesting. I mean,
is it streaming already?
Yeah, it's soon-ish, I think.
Yeah. I was going to say novels even more so, right? There is just no way to sit down and read a book and look, like you can listen to music or whatever, but that's it's very hard to, you can't like listen to a podcast and read a book at the same time and expect to engage with.
I've tried a couple of times to like listen to a podcast and like read an article at the same time.
I've definitely written while listening to this show to give notes. It's hard, but I can do it.
Yeah. But sorry, you were saying, Chris.
Yeah.
Well, I was saying that like this is what just last thing I'll say about Zone of Interest, which is actually kind of fascinating, Leighton, if you see it again, which is it is very intense, but it's Justin Chang from LA Times in his review made a really good point, I thought, which is he was like, actually the movie itself is not that hard to watch. Like it's like the actual viewing experience of it is kind of dull and very ordinary in a way that makes it very palatable in a very kind of not insidious, but like a deceptively like it's sort of seductively boring in a way that sort of underlines the point. You know?
I will compare it to a movie that I haven't seen, which is a real pretentious move of me, but it's like Chantal Akerman, Jeanne Delman.
That is exactly what I thought of when I was watching that movie. By the way, that is, first of all, that's the #1 movie on the Sight and Sound poll now.
Which is crazy.
It toppled Citizen Kane. That movie is great. And
I've never seen it.
I genuinely, it's sort of like that Hog book I described, where that movie is like, the point of it is to kind of wear you down with how tedious it is.
To the point that variations in the pattern, like, become a big deal.
I love that movie. Now, I don't know if I can, like, I'd have to, like, commit to, like, successfully sitting down to watch it. But that is a movie that, like, I would say to get the most out of it, you need to commit to, like, 3 hours of, or, like, 2 hours and 45 minutes of tedium.
And you have to turn your phone off. It's the same, like if you have your phone anywhere near you watching Zone of Interest, it's not going to be the same. Very different thing, but have you seen, this is the movie that there's a small handful of people I can recommend it to and everyone else will turn it off immediately, but it's one of my favorite movies that I've seen in the past like years. But have you seen Damon Packard's Reflections of Evil?
No, I haven't.
Oh, fuck.
I will watch it.
It's some true outsider art. It's also on archive.org.
Okay.
But in terms of just being an assault on the senses, it's the opposite of Zone of Interest, where it's just everything is cranked up all the way. It's pure chaos. It's angry. Like, I'm not sure I've seen a movie that's as viscerally furious as that movie is.
That sounds kind of sounds like Dear Zachary. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have. I've also read the book that it's
like Dear Zachary is not that well made, but it's very angry in its construction, you know?
It is. I guess I wouldn't compare it, but that is a very purely angry piece of cinema. Brian, you would love Dear Zachary.
Do not watch Dear Zachary.
I was going to say,
never.
Before I forget, when that Sight and Sound poll came out from NSP, I tweeted Ninja Brian, and then the rest of the address, I looked it up because I forgot it was 23 commerce key. And someone replied, "Don't dox him," which I thought was very funny.
Oh, Brian Weck, known doxer.
Yeah. Wait, can I catch you? Speaking of addresses, I'll just catch, because this is where I've been thinking of the Yuck My Yum issue recently. To catch you up on some gay bear drama.
Please.
Which is the musician and podcaster Big Dipper just released a viral clip of his podcast that he has with a drag queen named Meatball, and they had the guest Ben De La Creme. And in this viral clip, he was talking about when he hooks up with someone on one of the apps, he will give them the wrong address, like the address across the street or next door, and he'll look at the person through his window before texting them the correct address. And this is blown up in the gay world of like basically canceling Big Dipper because he's endangering people, blah, 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 like that. It's a shitty thing to do. And so I'm kind of neither here nor there about Big Dipper in general, but I was thinking like, there's a very strong, like in my worlds right now, of just like everybody hates him, we should cancel him. First of all, it's a situation where like the more you talk about it, the more he's a musician and he's soaking up sort of engagement on his Twitter. So like the more you post about how heinous this is, like the more power he gets, you know?
Yeah.
But I was also like, oh, so like And I would say there's an overlap between my friends who are talking about this and people who watch Steven Universe that don't want people to yuck their yum, you know? And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
what if I just like Big Dipper's podcast and music now? Like, and I don't think it's that big a deal. Shouldn't you also not yuck my yum by bringing up this thing, which if I was someone who loved Big Dipper, maybe I wouldn't think was that big a deal. And so I have been thinking about yuck my yum in this context as well.
What's always interesting is there's some kind of tower of what you're allowed to like, or not by everybody, of course, but among some people, like you can like it except if, you know, they've done this sort of thing or they've done this sort of thing. And so everyone has their own personal stratification of what is considered so bad that you're not allowed to like it anymore.
Right. Like,
And that's the confusing part.
Like, will you like the Ariana Grande album that just came out, which is a lot about her relationship and is sort of about her dating a guy who left his wife and infant child for her, you know? Like,
I had to call Rachel because I was listening to them talk about it on Las Culturistas, and I was like, Rachel, they've been talking about this Ariana Grande album for 20 minutes, and I have no idea what they're referring to. Can you please tell me what the drama is? And then she
wait, I'm fascinated. Brian, what is your opinion? Because actually, I was going to bring up Las Culturistas when Leighton, you were talking about your tastes and how they're worse off camera. Because did you see the Tina Fey Las Culturistas clip?
I listened to every Las Culturistas episode. I think I started maybe a year into that podcast, and I have heard everything they've ever done since then. Yeah.
So then, Brian, what is your perspective on the Ariana Grande relationship to like Bowen? Because that's a point of contention right now because they're being sort of apologists for Ariana Grande right now.
Yeah, I mean, my short answer is I don't really understand the full situation, but yeah, I mean, I don't like all internet drama. I feel like I don't know enough to really comment on it. You know, this is the thing. Like, I don't really understand the drama of the situation, except she left her husband and cheated on, is this right? Cheated on her husband with a guy who also was cheating on his wife or something like that. And they had a
the
new
cheating
baby.
is not,
Like,
the cheating is gray. The main issue is that his wife just had a baby and then he left her. And so the legit timeline that they're putting is that like they separated and then he started dating Ariana. But what I'm mostly asking you is like, because I'm not as familiar with Las Culturistas, but like in reading about it, it's like, have they had a history of like being very catty towards like housewives and other people in the public eye, but then suddenly are not being that way because they're friends with Ariana?
I don't think that's true. I think that in general, both those guys, Bowen and Matt, seem to be pretty straightforward about this stuff. So it does not seem to me that there was... I think they're generally pretty honest about who they know and what their relationship is with people. And even in that episode, Bowen says, yeah, I know her. She's a friend. Like, this is not a secret. That did not seem wildly out of context with what I've heard them say in the past at all. Like, and I don't think they were hiding it either. You know, it's public knowledge that Bowen Yang and Ariana Grande are like good friends now. So it struck me weird only in that I had no idea what they're fucking talking about. So I had to call and get clarification. But it didn't seem like their commentary was anything different than it ever had been. They're, from what I know of them, only through, I don't know either of those guys personally, from what I know of them on the podcast, they're pretty straight shooters with that stuff, and they call out stuff that they feel like needs to be called out, and they don't do it for, you know, when they don't. So I don't have a really informed opinion on it. Listening to that episode, it didn't seem weird to me at all.
Leighton, I don't know if you heard the Tina Fey thing, but basically it was about like how public can you be with your opinions on a podcast as you get more popular. Yeah. So that's why I was thinking about you when you said like your opinions off mic are maybe even more like opinionated than they are on the podcast.
Basically what she says to Bowen Yang, you know, who's a big star now, is she's like, you're too famous to have opinions. Like you essentially, like, you can't have honest opinions anymore because you're now a star, and anything you say is going to get amplified 1,000-fold and turned into a thing, which is something, by the way, I mean, I'm nowhere near the level of a Bowen Yang, but this is something I think about. Like we have a fan base. I don't, I'm not going to, I mean, Leighton, from talking to me off mic, I have plenty of opinions I'm not going to fucking put out there publicly because I have no interest in
and
that
it's not
getting
because they're
turned
bad. It's just you don't have to put every fucking opinion that you have online.
That's right.
You
And
just
also
don't
the
have
idea
to.
that, I mean, look, no
Brian's
one
wearing
is
a
going...
shirt. Brian is wearing a shirt that says "I hate Jonathan Colton" right now.
That's right. Yeah. But like, I mean, look, I could say basically anything and I wouldn't, no fucking, gossip, whatever would pick it up. I'm not that kind of public figure. But also I am aware that anything I say will go out to a lot of people to some extent. And I am more careful with what I say publicly than probably I otherwise would be.
Well, and this is a thing that I've been thinking about a lot in terms of the fact that I've pretty much entirely stopped posting unless it's related to this podcast. But anytime I read or look at things I've posted in the past, I'm just like, who is this person? This isn't authentic. This is watered through so many layers of what feels acceptable to post and so many internal layers of, well, I know what the 10 most annoying comments on this or reactions are going to be. So I feel like I need to beat him to the punch a little bit or whatever, and just realizing that I, struggle with self-loathing. The things that I like about myself are not parts that can be online. And I think that's good. Again, it's not because they're bad, it's because they're me, and I can only be most fully myself, and I like myself at my most fully myself. I can't do that on a mic for public consumption. I don't know the audience. If I'm with people that I'm really close with, that's the full Leighton experience, and I like that Leighton. It's just the being on the internet requires multiple levels of like gloss. I don't know. So I guess that's probably threatening to anybody who listens to this show and is like, Leighton's fucking weird.
But I think that's really valuable to know about yourself because and I do think this is a situation where like the algorithms have hurt us because I do think there was probably a world where like my favorite social media of all time was LiveJournal. And
I remember
the
those
algorithm
days.
on LiveJournal is your friends' posts sorted reverse chronological. That's the algorithm.
Yeah.
And so the things about yourself that might shine in that context are different than the things that would shine in an IG feed. So knowing that you're butting up against these social media environments where like the thing you post on Twitter just isn't where the best of you can be is like, I think pretty like a very valuable thing to like realize.
Yes.
I'm way funnier off mic, which works out when you have a podcast.
And you're very funny on mic too. But
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
but so then like it makes it more thorny, the idea of like, how do we be like creative artists in a world where like one of the main ways to like promote yourself and make money is somehow navigating these algorithms,
Yeah. And by doing the big opinion that you're incentivized to have more extreme ones because that gets engagement, whether it's positive or negative. And then it's a matter of like, how much do you actually believe the thing that you said once you were directly financially compensated for saying the most outrageous thing possible?
100%. Yeah, and then we see people in that cycle, you get Rogan'd over and over where you double down on the worst shit imaginable because it drives clicks.
The curse of relatability. Everything that is posted must be 100% relatable to everyone that reads it. And if it's not relatable to me, I have to make it about me. So even in an innocuous statement that's a generalization, that's when you get people inserting themselves like, but what about this? Like, come on. It's you're inserting yourself into a thing. Not everything is about you all the time. It's people should have unique and singular experiences. It's nice to be seen as a human, but the goal of every statement, every expression of self shouldn't be that every other human can look at it and go, I do that. It shouldn't be that way. There are a lot of things that can be that way, but we're individual human beings. It's not about you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it's like, what if there's a thing that really is about you for like 11% of the people, and can it be okay for the other 89% to be like, yeah, okay, that I didn't connect with that?
Yes,
as
like
opposed to
pretty much
you know,
all the media we've talked about on this show so far you could argue is for I don't think Zone of Interest, although, critically acclaimed, is for most people from what I know about, right? So I think that's great. I think that's a great strategy. It kind of comes back to what we were talking about before about, working on, like, you have a big success and then how do you follow it up? The answer is it is a total cliche, but you just make something for yourself and you hope that people like it. Like I was talking recently, or you don't care if people like it or not, which is the even more successful version of that. You just put the thing out there and you're like, okay, that's fucking done, moving on. But I've been talking with a number of people about this smooth jazz album I put out, which is from, I think, any perspective, a bad idea, because it is not funny enough to be a comedy album and it's not jazzy enough to be a jazz album, and it's played very straight unless you're really paying attention. But even if you are paying attention, you might not know enough of the shtick that's in there, like music stuff, to get it. It is like the phrase I've used in describing it to people is laser targeted to appeal to nobody, because it's exactly in the middle of genres in a way that dooms anything to not be successful. Now, I love this album. It's exactly the thing I wanted to do. And other people have responded very, very nicely to it too. But it is like, I just, with that in particular, I just had to be like, I'm just doing this because I want to do it. Like if people hate it, they're going to hate it, but I can't worry too much about what other people think.
Where do you think your album sits in relationship to like the Tim Heidecker pop or like rock album that he put out? I don't know if you heard that.
In Glendale?
I have to listen to that again. I think Tim's an interesting case because some of the stuff he does pretty earnestly, but most of it not. Right? Like
the music is really earnest, though.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know the album well enough to really say, honestly.
I'm in the video for Work From Home.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yeah. Was not paid.
I keep meaning to tell you, Chris. A friend of mine, I was hanging out with. I'll just say Hav Hogan from TWRP.
Yes.
Okay.
And somehow I forget exactly how this came up, but I know, he was saying, he's been watching Superstore. And I was like, I know someone who was in that. The guy who plays Jerry. And he was like, you know Jerry? And I'm like, yeah, I've known Jerry Chris for a long time. And he's like, oh my God. Like, he was starstruck.
This is so funny because
yes,
you two would get along so well.
Yes,
very, very similar.
Yeah.
Hav and I are like always on it about movies and art and stuff. Like it's, yeah.
Well, let's meet up. It's interesting when people say, like, people will say that, like, that I'm not being falsely modest here. They'll say like I was really funny on Superstore, and sometimes I'm like, I was? Like, I'm like, I don't remember doing any, because my approach to that was so minimal and deadpan the whole time that I was just like, in my mind, I'm just like, I don't remember any like funny bits that I did.
No, he was like, Jerry is my favorite character on that show, hands down. Like, absolutely, yeah. All right, let's. You mentioned it before, Leighton, but I do want to talk, Chris, about your awesome show. Because it was, we all had a great time. My sister was in town, so Leighton, me, my sister Steph, past guests of the show, and Rachel all came to see it, and it was so much fun, and it was just great to see you, and we all loved it.
And I'm curious what the difference, because we came to the earlier show and you had a later show, right? I'm curious what the difference is between those, how that went for you.
So this is a show that I did in Edinburgh in 2023. It went very well, as I was saying before. Like, it really, it sold and got critical reviews beyond what I could reasonably expect. Like, I mean, of course, when you're making it, you're like, oh, wouldn't it be great if, like, I sold out the month and whatever. But then to have it actually happen, and I bet both of you have experienced this, where like it starts to go beyond like you're like, wait, why did you come see this show? Like, how did you hear about this? Because there's a first and second circle of people that you're like, oh, okay, well, this is my friends and family. And then these are like people that know me from improv or whatever. And then there starts to be like third and fourth circle people that are like, wait, you're seeing, I would even put in the second circle people that know me from Superstore, right?
Yeah.
Then the third circle that's just like, oh yeah, we read a review in The Guardian and we came to see it. And you're like, wait, what? Like, so I did the show at the Elysian in January.
Yeah. Well, can you say what the show is for people?
Yeah, it's Chris Grace as Scarlett Johansson. And it's essentially like this one person exploration of like Scarlett Johansson's life and my life sort of like weaved together. And I did it in January at the Elysian, sort of as a like, people from LA hadn't seen it since I did it at Hollywood Fringe last year. Also, the show that you saw was a taping for Dropout. And so Dropout, some of the people from Dropout came to see me do it in January to sort of scout it, to be like, we want to get a sense of how, because we taped it in the Elysian as well. So it was like, they kind of wanted to see like what approach should we take towards like angles and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And at the Dropout one, at the January 30th one, that one, even day of or day before, I was like, I don't know how many people are going to come see this. Like, I think the Elysian seats like 100 something people.
Sounds a bit
maybe 130 or something like that.
Yeah, somewhere around
there. I was like, I know I have friends from last year that didn't see it or they haven't seen it since June, so they'll come see it. And then as we're getting ready for the January show, they were like, oh yeah, we sold like 95. And I was like, that's crazy. And there was a chunk of people that had like, this is what we're all hoping for, right? Like just regular people being interested. But I mean, I guess when it just doesn't seem possible in some ways. Then at the taping, which is I think at 7:30, was more people that knew me, or had seen the show before, and so that was a crowd very receptive to, I think, the parts of the show that were more about me. Mm-hmm. And then the 10 o'clock show was more Dropout fans.
Oh,
and so I had a lot of jokes about Dropout in the show that killed in the second show. Like they did well with y'all, but like the more I made fun of Dropout in the second show. Because
I had never heard of Dropout before showing up in that theater.
Oh, I'm surprised. I feel like it's right up your alley.
Yeah, like, I know. You said it's a Hank Green thing?
No, Dropout is what used to be College Humor, and now has a lot of great stuff. Like they have these game shows called like Game Changer and Make Some Noise, and Zach Reno and Jess McKenna had a musical improv show on there called Play It By Ear.
Yes, that I didn't realize that was a Dropout thing. I know that one. Yeah.
So it was really interesting. Like the second audience, like so in this show, there's this context where like I'm sort of like reintroducing the show over and over, and there are these announcements that are about like, welcome to the theater, here's some things you need to know before the show starts. And I've been rewriting those every time I do them, specific for the venue. Yeah. And so that week I wrote a joke that was like, I can't remember what it was, but it was like, you're watching this on, I can't remember if it was BritBox or something, on a like a BritBox password borrowed from Fran Lebowitz or something like that. And the second crowd, which is mostly Dropout, and I think was a younger crowd, it was very obvious they had no idea who Fran Lebowitz was. And like, speaking of like fun, pretentious, snobbish, elite opinions in the world. But so yeah, that was a big difference. But like there was a low buzz of stress the entire day because I got to the theater at 2:00 that day, walked right into a tech rehearsal, and the tech rehearsal went up to like the half-hour call. The show for like audience loading in.
Wow.
So that was pretty overwhelming. It was really interesting. Like, it was very cool to look around, and there's like 30 people that are all getting paid to be there.
Yeah.
And thinking like, oh, they're all working here today. They're getting paid because of like a thing that was in my head.
And that was a serious shoot. Like that. I mean, they had
Yeah.
a dollar. Like it was really obviously not just a camera on a tripod in the corner. Like it was obviously a big deal.
They actually had an entire video village in a van outside.
That's amazing.
Like an FBI surveillance van type situation. So it was a very interesting thing but also in this way, which is, I think, could be slightly stressful. I think I managed to just sort of ride it as a wave. But like, there were multiple points during that day where I was like, oh, this is my show, but I'm not in control of this day. Like, it's sort of just plugging along. There's all these like technical considerations that are just happening outside of my control and never would have been in my control. So what is the potential for like the show being compromised if I get distracted by that, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's a long way from like when I do it in Edinburgh, it's me, my husband who directed the show, and one tech, and the show's pretty much going to be almost exactly the way I want it to be.
Right.
Just the more you add in other voices, it's not going to be 100% your vision. Yeah, that was also, as you witnessed, I had a fair amount of stress about just remembering my lines.
Although I mean, I can remember, I think one time where you asked for a line, but I definitely would not have placed that as you forgot a bunch of lines. It didn't come across that way to us.
No, it was just like
all.
a natural thing.
Yeah.
In both shows, I forgot a line immediately. You were the ones where I started berating the booth operator.
Yes, because it was, so there was a guy there who had a really loud walkie. Like a really loud radio on, right?
Yes.
And everybody could hear it immediately, like chatters coming through it. And you very politely said, hey, can we turn that down? I thought it was so necessary and great.
Yeah.
You were like, hey, can we please turn that down? Because it's really distracting. Because it was distracting everybody.
Yes.
Everybody in the house was feeling it.
And because I wasn't sure if it was someone's phone or like I wasn't sure what it was.
And you could tell the near mutiny of the audience of, is this someone's phone? Attack and kill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was the one line that you had to try a few times, and then once you finally got it, everyone laughed like way too hard.
Everyone like applauded.
Gotta take it down a few notches.
Yes.
That really got me.
It was a line where I said like, it wasn't the totality of Scarlett, daughter of the son of Johan. And I just like, I had recently put it in very mildly, like at best a droll joke. And I messed it up like 4 times, and then I finally just did it right. And then the audience was like clapping, and I was like, we can't use that. And it will be so jarring if that line gets like an applause break in the middle of the show.
Yeah.
And I think the funny thing was audience trying to do collective tepid laughter.
Yeah. But I actually did tell Jonah Ray directed it, and I told him afterwards, I was like,
I didn't know that.
I was like, use whatever you want to use. So like, I don't like specials that are like really too polished. So
Same.
I'm like, if you any of that you want to put in, I'm happy for him to put in. Like,
I think that would be great. Put it all in. Like, I love the idea of keeping that in. It really humanizes it and makes it funnier.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a very surreal thing. It was one of those things like, I would say over the last 2 years, I've had a handful of moments where I was just like, that one date on my calendar is a really big, stressful date. I don't really know. I've had this mentality about this like since college, because I remember I wrote a 1-act play, like or a 15-minute play that we did in the context of like drama, college drama program. This was like a big deal.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking then, probably the first time I thought of this, but I've come back to this a lot, which is like, well, 24 hours from now, this will be over. Like, and so like,
yeah,
nothing is like, time is going to pass. The events are going to happen. And so like, I guess I'm like mildly dissociating myself from the moment in a way. But I had that feeling of like, it's morning of the thing. By this time tomorrow, we will have shot whatever we shot. And I think the thing that I appreciated the most was some combination of Dropout, me, and the director and the audience, like I did feel very like, okay, I'm able to like be in the moment in front of this audience tonight,
Yeah.
and we can capture it. I don't know. I have really no idea how well it's going to translate to the filmed version of it, but like both of those shows that night, I did feel very like, I feel free to like perform. If I screw up, I'm going to comment on it. Like I felt loose, like in front of the camera. Like that's
you seemed loose.
most like it.
You did not seem, nervous at all. It seemed very, very natural.
Also, you were doing the ultimate cool guy thing of like wandering around at the beginning and saying hi to everybody. It was just like,
Leighton, that's exactly what I was about to say. I love that you were just on stage walking around saying hi to people before the show. Like
I don't know where I got that from, but I really like it. And
It's great.
I'm also aware that it seems cool. Like I am aware that it seems powerful because it's like, oh, he's like not getting ready. He's like just going to start the show whenever we all feel like we're ready to start it, whatever. Because like in my new show for Edinburgh this year, I think I'm going to start it the same way because I just like it. I don't know what.
Yes. I agree. I wouldn't say, I wouldn't use the word powerful. I would just use friendly. I mean, it's like, because of course most things you walk in, you don't expect to see the person until the show starts. And it's like, oh, wow, there he is. Yeah. And especially because we're all there to support you and watch this great taping and everything. And it was, especially for that crowd, it was, everybody was happy to see you right away. You know what I mean? Like, I think it helped.
it was very cute.
This feeling of, oh, we're here for Chris. There's Chris. Great.
Yeah, because they asked me, did I want someone to like open for me? And I was like, oh, because that is how I've done the show. Like every day in Edinburgh, I would like to be out there. One bit of like administrative thing I do is I do interact with someone in the audience, and I do check in with them early to be like, hey, are you cool if I talk to you?
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
You know what? I think I just realized where I got that from though, because the play Every Brilliant Thing.
I don't know it.
Oh my God, it's like one of my favorite things I ever saw in Edinburgh. I think that happens in that. Like I remember, I'm pretty sure Johnny Donahoe, who I love, who performed in that, and also co-wrote it. I think he was greeting people. He was greeting people in a different way because basically Every Brilliant Thing is a fictional play about like this kid who his mother's going through depression, and to try to cheer up his mother, the kid writes a list of every brilliant thing in the world. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, number 1, ice cream on Sundays. Number 2, getting the newspaper, whatever. And he, as you're coming in, he's handing you a slip. So like he might hand you a piece of paper that says, number 38, rain on a Tuesday morning. And so during the play, he'll go like, that's when I started to write a list of every brilliant thing in the world. And he'll say, number 1. And he shouts out number 1. If you're the person holding that piece, you have to like say the thing.
That's cool. Yeah.
So I think in that one he's doing some
for me.
I know. I think in that one he's doing some like, I think that's where I got that from, because he's on stage from the moment the house opens.
Yeah.
Boy, speaking of anxiety, last year I saw Daniel Kitson's. If you find that anxiety producing, the Daniel Kitson play from last year was, and he specifically also mentioned being inspired by the same play in the same space. His play was everybody got handed a full script, and you had lines that were like highlighted in the paper script.
That's wild.
You had to be like ready for like when it was coming up to your part, because you had to like say things.
Oh God, that's like Natalie Palamides. I don't know how to say her name. Yeah, she did that show Egg that I saw at the Lyric that was very similarly audience grabby in the Lyric, which is very, very small. But speaking of Gian Delman, like that was a great show.
I love that show.
The Nate, I liked her Nate show too. Yeah, which is very confrontational with the audience.
By the way, I think in Nate, is there another character? I can't remember if there's another.
It's been so long since I've seen it.
I didn't see that.
But on stage, she brings people from the audience. She interacts with people from the audience. I don't think there's another human character on stage, but I could be wrong.
So Courtney Peroso, who does the Vanessa Sexbot 5000 show, she was, I think, associated with Natalie Palamides, and her show was another one that Dropout shot that weekend. Like the day after mine, they also filmed her.
Oh, that's smart. So they had the whole setup, and they just did another thing.
Yes, they filmed 5 shows that weekend.
Wow. Oh, that's cool. All at the Elysian.
All at the Elysian, but the like a month before they had shot one with Hank Green doing stand up. And have you seen this, or I don't know anything about it?
No, I haven't. But he was tweeting about it, and I interacted with him a little bit while he was doing that.
Oh, are you friends with Hank Green?
I wouldn't say we're friends, but we've interacted online and over email.
I mean,
So,
he was being shot. His special was shot as part of the same series as mine, and so I thought we would all like hang out. It's unrealistic.
That
I was like,
would have been
we
nice of them to do that. He's
could all be
awesome.
friends.
I think he's great. I'm a huge fan of his, and we've talked about, I forget exactly what it was. Maybe I started this science storytelling podcast, Story Collider, way back when, and I think he knew about that.
Cool.
Yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to say, like, we love the show. It was so much fun, and actually, after hearing about it for a year and change, it was like awesome to finally see it happen. I wanted to actually, when you did it in January, I was on a recording trip, so I was away, and I sent Leighton the link, and I was like, "Hey, Chris is doing a show," and Leighton said, "Oh, actually, I'm babysitting your daughter that night because you're away, so I can't go see her."
I was scared that the punchline of that was Leighton was in the nut house, which it also could have been. Wrong January.
Well,
right.
Leighton is showing this YouTuber named Preston to Audrey tonight.
Yeah, they're dating.
But yeah, I mean, thank you all so much for coming. Like, it was,
Of course.
it was, it's been really like interesting to be like, oh, I just made a really like personal show, and it seems to be being received well. And it's like people want, like, it's one of those things where like you do a lot of shows in comedy where you're like, I don't know, I guess you could come see this one. This one's fine.
Yes. Yeah.
And so this is one I've been really like, I am really proud of this show, and I really want people to see it. So, but to have the response has been very gratifying.
Well, I think it's intentionally or not, and tell me if this was, like, the title is just so hooky, right? Because you have a major celebrity name right there. It's like, and the image of you in the the red wig and stuff in some of the promo images.
Yeah.
I just think it is very grabby and eye catching in a great way.
I think so too. And also, this is the thing that scares me about my other show, like, because I don't have a grabby thing for my next show. And so, like, I recognized over the last year how many times I would just, like, even on the street in Edinburgh, I'd tell people the title of the show, and they'd be like, "Oh, that sounds interesting." And
Totally.
like, I'll tell you right now, my show for Edinburgh this year is called Sardines, a comedy about death. And like, I don't think as many people on the street are going to, it's like my show this year. I think it's possible that this show will be more appealing, but to a smaller audience.
Well, you've already got three things. Ears are perked. You got comedy, death, and sardines. Like,
Yeah.
I'm in.
Right.
I will say that, like, the things that make me interested but also nervous about this show are, like, in the Scarlet Show, there's a chunk at the end where, like, a lot of the artifice of it falls away, and it's just like me talking.
Right.
This show is like almost all that tone, and I don't have much theatrical artifice to it.
You don't have a stack of toppling wigs.
Yes, and I think that a lot of people found the artifice of the last show, including reviewers, found it very appealing in a way that's, like, sort of easy to highlight as, like, oh, this is a cool little, there's a meta structure to it that's interesting. And, like, that's the thing.
And I say this as a compliment. It's a gimmick in a good way.
Yeah.
Right?
So by the way, I only, like, literally 2 weeks ago realized that it was influenced by Undertale and Stanley Parable. Like,
Oh my God.
like I was gonna go play Undertale or something. I was like, wait a minute, Undertale, like, restarts over and over, and so does Stanley Parable. And so this is when we were talking about, like, working on your second thing, is like, I'm going to have to just commit to this, because the one this year is not very theatrical. It's, like, way more on the, like, this is just a personal exploration. And so unless some grand theatrical framework occurs to me between now and August, it's probably not going to have that. So I'm just going to have to like commit to it and like hope that the people aren't coming for just like another Baroque, like overly complicated, structure or framework.
Are you going to be doing it in LA first?
In June, I'm doing it at the Hollywood Fringe 5
great.
times. So in a space that seats, I think 22 people. Low expectations.
Well, I'm assuming you'll put it out on the newsletter and socials and
Yes,
stuff like that. Right?
absolutely. Yeah. For sure.
I think this is a good place to wrap it up, as much as I would love to keep this going for
Wait,
know,
quick segments
foreseeable
at all?
future. No, we're going to skip
Oh.
segments. Do you want to do? Wait,
Unless you have
do
something you really want to say, because I don't
Yeah.
have anything about the segments that I really wanted to say.
I mean, I
The
have stuff
only
can-
thing I wanted to
yeah.
say is I do have a pop culture recommendation.
Do it.
All right, do
which
it.
is this is a very selfish one, but it is the social deduction game Blood on the Clock Tower, which I have been playing since August. It has probably become my number one hobby / pursuit since August, and I
Is
feel
social
like they're
deduction.
probably
Do you mean is that like a werewolf type?
it's like
game? Is that what
werewolf.
that
It's like
means? Okay.
it's like the best version of werewolf or mafia that has ever been invented.
Blood.
And it
Okay,
is
that's good to know.
it's sort of a growing cult game that it is like I have to like tamp down how often I talk about it with people because like my husband is like very sick of me talking about it. But it is super fun, and I've actually gotten the chance to I've gotten the chance to play it for content, but like in London.
that's
And I'm
cool.
going to be at the DC Clock Tower Con in April playing this game.
Wow.
That's awesome.
But anyway, it's basically like I don't know if either of you have played Werewolf Mafia style games,
Oh,
but
I play
Tiny bit.
werewolf a lot. Yeah.
so it's an improvement on Werewolf because when you die, you don't have to stop talking.
That's great.
so-
That's the worst part of werewolf.
Yeah, so this is even if you die first, you are still involved with the game all the way to the end. I would say that's the biggest improvement, and there's some other like nuances to it or whatever. But I bet some of your listeners have played it already. If they have, feel free to find me online because I play it online as well. But
can play it
I mean,
online.
I will like happily if y'all can get 7 to 9 people together at one of your homes. I'm happy to come over run the game for you because it's really fun.
Yeah.
That is my record.
Yeah, we have a bunch of big board game nerds that would probably be very into this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Great.
Also, just a great, I will say, from a game design perspective, it's very, very well tested and designed.
Is it recent? Did it just come out recently?
2022.
Like it came out of a Kickstarter maybe a year and a half ago, but it's been around for like 5 years, I think. But like the physical game only came out like maybe 18 months ago or something like that. But it got big over the pandemic through its online app.
But there's already a con because it's so popular.
Yeah, I mean, like it's weird. What's weird is I'm not that into board games, so like I'm sort of
Neither am
I
I.
like board games.
Yeah, kinda same.
But this game I love. So like I'd rather go to a convention where people are only playing. Like I went to one in Vegas, the Vegas Clock Tower Con, which I'll also be going to in October. Last October I went, and from Thursday to Sunday I played 23 Blood on the Clock Tower games.
Oh my
Oh my
god.
god. That's good to know. That's promising because I don't like board games like at all. So the fact that you're kind of in the same zone, all right.
The ones
Yeah.
I like, but I'm not like a board game guy like some people are.
This is like if you're a person that falls into rabbit holes, this is a rabbit hole because it is not that complicated on the surface, but then gets really deep type game. So
All right.
potentially dangerous in that way.
Right.
That's good. I'm always looking for a new hyperfixation because we've circled back around to Fallout in my brain, and I'm having a great time. But it's in terms of tamping myself down for this show. You guys have no idea how much I'm holding back.
Well, I was gonna say you almost went a full episode without mentioning
I
Fallout.
almost did,
That's
but guess
like,
what? I'm wearing my
yeah.
New Vegas shirt under this.
Again.
Whoa!
Still.
Wait, before we go, you probably talked about it already, but can I get a summary of what you thought of the trailer?
I don't watch trailers usually, but I watched this one and I watched the one little scene that they put up. I reserve my judgment. I don't want to be a hater. I know who I am. And I feel like I want to wait until I've seen it before I start talking shit, but there are things that concern me.
Okay. I will say that I watched that trailer and like Eric's not familiar, my husband is not familiar with Fallout. And because I played the very first Fallout when it came out, and I was telling him like, I think this is where the whole thing of like show a post-apocalyptic, like again tableau, and play like old music. You know, the like the juxtaposition of the like I just want to set the world on.
Yeah,
like,
right.
I think that's where I first saw that. I don't know if it has been in like maybe in other things before.
Well, it's also
But-
not even in 1 and 2, which I've started playing 1 and I'm a like quarter through 2 right now. But obviously I am a younger, more contemporary gamer, so I wasn't raised on that level of this is punishingly difficult. But even those don't rely on it that much outside of like the opening cinematics. And those opening cinematics
Yes.
stick with you. But then you get to like Fallout 4, which that's the whole bit. It's like Fallout as a series, especially in Bethesda games, fall prey to their own aestheticization of the entire conceit, where like this world sucked before the bombs dropped. It sucked, but we're continuing to fetishize this thing. Where like with 4 and 76, it's like, do you understand what you were originally riffing on in the first place, or do you just think that it's cool when we see like a Nuka-Cola ad and the ink spots are playing? It's the same with the Brotherhood of Steel taking a huge, obviously, role in this thing. Brotherhood of Steel, worst faction. We did everything we could do with the Brotherhood of Steel in 1 and 2 already, played out already. I'm sorry that you guys made the Enclave power armor like right away, and it's the coolest shit, and it's iconic, and now you have to put it on the front of every fucking Fallout game. But in terms of what we can do with the Brotherhood of Steel, we're done. They suck. You guys have blown it multiple times. They're not interesting. We did this in the fucking 50s with a Canticle for Leibowitz, which was going to be my What's Poppin'. That's what like half of the Fallout lore is based on. That's where the Brotherhood of Steel comes from. I'll stop.
Wow. No, I will just say, have you ever checked out the old game called Wasteland?
Oh,
No.
you know what? As you were talking about, I was obsessed with Wasteland when it came out.
Yes.
I actually, one of my worst gaming stories ever. So I played all of Wasteland, obsessed with it. My copy was buggy and I couldn't finish the final battle. So I spent God knows how many hours on this fucking game. I even got it on Steam when it came out on Steam.
I would definitely recommend it,
couldn't
Leighton.
get to
This
the
is
end.
awesome. Your life has ended
Yeah.
in the wasteland. Yeah.
So, Brian, I'm pretty sure it's been released in like retro versions, or like
Yeah.
you can play it on archive.org or something. Because so for Brian and I, when that game came out, that was a game that you would play it for a while, and the companies were still trying to figure out how to do like copy protection.
Yes.
And the copy protection of that was
my God.
read paragraph 19 or whatever
Yep.
from the book. Like the next plot element was in a physical book.
Yes.
And so, like, if you didn't have the game, you'd just be like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now.
There were so many, there were so many like copy protection things. Infocom had a ton of these where there was one game I had, actually, you know what? It might have been the Neuromancer game where it was like a wheel you had to spin, you know, with different windows in it. And it would like, there'd be a particular number that came up and you had to read it.
I remember a lot of like red film, like hold
Yes.
this red
Yep.
film over this mesh pattern and you have to
Yep.
read a code back or something.
Wow.
That's right. They had a lot of that. Yep. And yeah, there was, and it was crazy. Yeah, and if you didn't have the physical thing, you just couldn't play the game. End of story.
Yeah.
And so you couldn't stop people from copying it, but you could stop people from playing it. And this is why, yeah, Infocom went bananas with these too, because they would always include, they called them feelies, like physical shit in the game boxes.
Yeah. Jory and I have
yeah.
talked about that sort of like ephemera a lot and how it's kind of
I had all of
lost
it.
in a lot
I
of ways.
love, yeah.
Well, we could easily go on like 5 different tangents
know.
right now, but we should end the episode.
Yes.
So, Chris, where can people find you online?
Oh yeah, I'm on TikTok and Instagram. I'm like, don't go on TikTok. By the way, go on my TikTok. My TikTok's very nothing, but I'm at Chris Grace Comedy. And you know what? By the time this goes out, the main thing is I kind of want people to like subscribe to my newsletter, which is not like a Substack. It's just like telling you what's going on.
That's great.
Yeah.
Where can they do that?
So that's what I'm saying. Go to chrisgrace.com. It'll be up today. Sure.
It is worth reading. You always have great recommendations. It's just a fun read. Like it is very much worth getting in your inbox.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah.
Chris.
I was just going to say you're the best. Like this is, this is a very, very rare instance of the show where we have a guest and skip segments because the conversation's too good. So like this is, Chris, you're an all-timer on this show and in general. And I just want to thank you for taking the time again to come back and be on with us.
Yeah, have me on. I want to join the 3-timer club next time.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, let's make it happen. Folks at home, just think about what you've done. Goodbye.
Wow.
I didn't know how to go more specific with it, so I just went really broad.
Late Night is produced by Brian Wecht and Leighton Gray. Sign up for our Patreon at patreon.com/LeightonNight. Follow us on Twitter at LeightonNight, on Instagram at Leighton_night, or email us at leightonnight@gmail.com.